Anthony's architectural practice has designed new homes for families across the UK, spanning a range of budgets and briefs from converted agricultural buildings to coastal retreats. Each house is unique, tailored to the needs of its inhabitants and designed to maximise the potential of the site. But what he hopes they all share is not just that they are beautiful, well-built and efficient houses, but that they capture the spirit of their setting and have greatly enhanced the lives of those who call them home. His practice has 6 core values at its heart that define who they are and how they work. These are design, collaboration, being placemakers, environmentalists, curious, to learn and experiment, improving and pushing boundaries and embracing innovation, and caring. They care about being front-runners in research and development and about their buildings being of the highest quality. They respect and nurture talent, knowledge and resilience to be the best they can in all that they do. And that's what you say on your website, I think?
Yeah, that's correct.
That's all right. So we can go home now. Let's start. Would you tell us a bit about your background, Anthony, and the beginnings?
Well,
where did you grow up? And
is this too loud? No, I am a Norfolk man. I was brought up in Norfolk and lived in Norfolk with my mum and dad in a little village. Well, actually, I was born in the maternity thing in West London, and you can just get into but we were living in Headingham, at Barney at the time, and then we moved to Headingham. It was a very, very small farm, 26 acres. So I was brought up on a farm, which was absolutely fantastic, and probably one of the reasons that kind of got interested. It was very, very open life, being able to do whatever you liked on the farm, making things, playing around. So that was sort of my background on a farm that had pigs, cows, chickens, ducks, and a bit of arable. And it was kind of all hands on. My father expected me and my mum and everybody to muck in, do everything on the farm.
And when you said making things, what sort of things were you making?
Oh, my dad always had, never threw anything away. He just kept everything like that.
Is that what dads do you think? I mean, my dad did that. I'd imagine everybody's dad did it. Had a cupboard or a drawer where they kept things that they were sure would come in. They never seemed to, so...
Well, he never threw anything away, and he didn't even throw scrap away, so there was loads of wood and metal and bale twine. Bale twine was a very important bit of... It kind of held everything together that you could think of. Anything that could be mended with bale twine. I regularly used to have to... we helped him sort of clear out his workshop. Well, I didn't help him, he couldn't be bothered with having it was complete chaos in his workshop. And I just sort of tried to sort things out and help sort of doing a bit of woodwork, a bit of metalwork here, a bit of welding there. So it was incredibly practical. And then we would build houses, when the harvest came, we were baling and stuff like that. I used to, as a kid, we had a great fun building little houses. And I think, it's sort of unconscious way of working. And I think I've always had that kind of interest in kind of putting things together and in various different ways. And we had sort of sand pits and kind of created little tents and canopies to live in.
Yeah.
So it was a very formative part of my life.
Sure. And did he show you how to use tools and things, or did he just let you use them?
He just let me use them. I it's one of the things that I think it's I can see this in some of my children as well. It's just that you kind of think, you can find out yourself and try and do it, and it's a reluctance to be taught, which is probably not a good thing, but anyhow, that's the way. But it's always about experimenting and trying to see how things work.
Yeah. Well, I've often said, and I said when I was teaching, I think what's misunderstood often is that creative children are not empty vessels waiting to be filled up. They're full vessels waiting to be emptied. And it's just somebody allowing them, giving them permission to, which sounds like your background was and did.
Yeah, and it's a bit of experimenting. We used to, build a straw house out of straw bales, and occasionally they collapsed, and we thought, "Ooh, this is a bit dangerous." Tunnelling. I mean, we used to fill barns full of straw bales, and you used to find ways of kind of sort of tunnelling into them.
Sure.
It was fun. It was fun.
And of course, a life that health and safety would just not make possible anymore.
No, not at all.
Where did you go to school?
I went to school, started off at a primary school in Telthorpe, which is no longer there. It's now kind of been knocked down. And there's the sad occasions when lots of really lovely public buildings get knocked down and turned into housing. But anyhow, went to Telthorpe Primary School, and then after that I went to Beeston Hall, the prep school, and then to that familiar place we all know, Gresham's, around here.
Okay, yeah. And did you enjoy it?
I can remember enjoying my primary school. My enjoyment of school kind of goes in reverse order to the kind of chronology of actually going to them. So I loved the primary school. I really enjoyed Beeston. Didn't so much enjoy Gresham's. It was, it's one of those. As I think it's partly because of specialising. Kind of you things were much more open at a younger,
Yes.
sort of early stages of education. But as you it was those days where you couldn't, when I went, doing Gresham's, you couldn't mix arts and sciences together, and that for me was kind of looking back on it was a huge issue, I think.
Okay,
So,
you had to choose?
I had to choose, and I chose science.
Okay.
Mathematics, chemistry, and physics, and I kind of didn't. I can remember kind of not painting or making things or anything for a long period of time, and I kind of think I was kind of looking back at it seems a bit strange not being able to do that.
What was your reason for choosing that? I know that I remember I had friends at school who did sciences, and some of them clearly did them because they weren't going to have to do essays and things.
I was very good at maths and physics. So it was the things that I kind of sort of really did very, very well in.
Right.
And better than I think history, and you either had to choose one or the other, and they said, well, you can do this much better, so we'll carry on doing that.
Okay.
Yeah.
And was there a sense at that stage of how you might use these things, or just the subjects you were best at and therefore encouraged it?
And I had no kind of view of had no idea of what I was going to do. I mean, obviously there was that kind of thing in the background of my farming background that my dad would have liked me to take over the farm.
Right.
And that was kind of always there, always on the agenda, always the sort of elephant in the room, really.
Were you tempted, or this was an elephant you were trying to avoid?
It was an elephant I was trying to avoid. I think, it was, we'd moved, at the time, we'd moved from the small scale, 26 acres, to a 168 acre farm. And because farming has changed so dramatically, it was the most romantic kind of upbringing you could imagine, working on a small-scale farm. But then, as kind of costs and issues and health and safety kind of grew, my dad had to kind of go into specialise in pigs. So he had a 1,500 pig farm,
right.
And it all got too kind of intense, intense both in terms of intensity of number of pigs per square foot, but also just kind of it was just pigs and pigs and pigs. And there was very little arable, and there was no variety, no diversity.
Right.
And I just think the winters were very, obviously were very long and wet. And he had grown up on big farms. He was a tenant farmer actually. Who was going to be a tenant farmer on the Holcombe estate, but they actually lost the farm through various reasons.
Okay.
And so he kind of set up a much smaller farm. But I think the kind of the possibilities of farming having a small farm are just not on the cards any longer.
Sure. What particular things interested you early on? I mean, you've kind of covered this in a way, but were there particular books or objects or things that were special to you? These might be toys, or they might be something that you just acquired from finding it, or whatever.
Yeah, I think I was making. I mean, I think I sort of airfix was really crucial. Not necessarily the planes, but kind of the boats. I used to make nearly every single airfix boat. I don't think you can get them anymore, but they were wonderful things. And airfix people, you made you could do King Henry VIII and whatever it was. So I had my bedroom was absolutely crammed full of kind of models and things like that. And made, I can remember the first Sandy Shaw, Puppet on a String. I managed to make my first radio just before the Eurovision contest came out, and kind of listened to her under the bedclothes, and I was told off by the lodger that my parents used to have, saying that I was going to go blind if I was carried on under the bedclothes.
Okay, that's often associated with other things, not radios, but okay. And you say you made a radio, so are we talking about an old valve radio?
No, it was transistors were just coming in.
Okay.
Yeah.
And you bought a kit?
And I bought a kit, yeah. And I was absolutely amazed that it actually worked.
Impressive, yeah. And was there any particular experience when you were young, maybe to do with the arts, but some sort of formative thing? Could have been a performance, might have been a film, could have been a book or a painting?
My grandmother, my mum's mum, was a fantastic watercolourist, and she was kind of always kind of, it was just a delight being with her, and she did these most amazing paintings, and she also lived in Norfolk. I mean, she did a lot of painting. She was brought up in London and Bristol, and her family moved to Norfolk. She's done these fantastic watercolours of the whole of Norfolk life and well, of the world, really, because she was very lucky at travelling at her age. Yeah. And I think that was a kind of, it's always been there at the back, in the background.
You wanted what she was doing? There were particular pictures of hers that you coveted, or you wanted to be able to do it yourself?
Well, not necessarily, but it was there in the background. But I think it was always making things. I can remember being very proud of making one winter when we got snow, when we used to get snow, made this amazing, I thought it was amazing, igloo snowman. Yeah. A snowman that you could actually kind of get inside and live inside. Okay. I don't know how high it was, about 5 metres high, I think. It was probably wasn't, but it was. I can remember being very, very pleased with that.
Was there anybody who was particularly inspirational to you early on? A member of the family, friend of the family, a friend at school, or whatever?
I think my dad was kind of was very, very important in the way he kind of he was the master. He was jack of all trades, master of probably none of them, but he could put his hands to anything. And then I had my uncle, which is the husband of my father's sister. Len was a constable, and he was he was I think 18, 19 years old. He was shot down when he had been flying over in the Second World War. And he kind of was absolutely fascinated in history and fascinated in architecture. And he was a good surveyor for a building which everybody thought was the most horrendously modern building possible, which is Hunstanton Primary School. But he was really, really proud of this. And it's by some very well-known modern architects, relevant well-known architects called Smithsons, and it was very, very radical. And I kind of, it was an introduction to me to architecture, although I kind of wasn't.
You wouldn't have called it that.
I wouldn't have called it that.
No, okay.
I mean, I didn't know anything about. To be honest, I didn't know anything about architecture. I didn't even really know it was a discipline until probably even when I got to university. I mean, I was completely. I mean, it did not appear on my horizon until very late. When you would imagine it was quite late.
Sure. Well, were you aware of art? You talked about your aunts.
Yes, yeah.
But were there? Did you go to galleries? Did you have books at home?
Not very much. We weren't a hugely artistic family. I mean, my mum was an artist, or did follow her mother as a watercolourist. My dad didn't have a huge amount of time for art, it has to be said. He was quite dismissive of time spent kind of sort of painting and stuff like that.
Okay.
And he didn't really understand it, to be honest. He didn't really understand it.
It was a luxury.
It was a good Norfolk farmer.
Okay, yeah. Were you beginning to think at all about buildings at this stage? I mean, even as a young person, we were listening to Norman Foster on the radio, I think it was This Cultural Line, and he was talking about the importance of the Eagle comic when he was younger, and the sort of, there was the various science fiction things involved in that comic storylines.
Yeah,
Are you interested in fantasy buildings as well?
No, completely opposite to Norman Foster. I had no interest in science fiction or anything like that. What I had an interest in was old buildings. And I can remember it was actually at Beeston, there was a history club, and we used to go to visit churches and houses, and I absolutely loved that. That was I've always, right from an early age, loved old buildings.
Right.
I'm kind of fascinated by them, and there's a sort of seeing something, and I can remember my grandmother taking me around Strangers' Hall in Norwich and absolutely falling in love with it. And it's probably one of my favourite buildings it's one of my favourite buildings because I just think it's such a collage of different periods of time all come to mesh together to make something rather wonderful. And it's got this incredible complexity in the way that all the rooms kind of sort of rather like a Chinese puzzle all fit together.
Right.
And that's been a very, very important sort of aspect of the way I kind of design as well, is trying to get that kind of intermeshing of spaces, overlapping spaces. Right. And Strangers' Hall is a wonderful building.
Right. So, did you have early ambitions at that stage? What were you thinking you were moving towards, or it was just a little bit at a time?
Yeah, a little bit at a time. I didn't have huge aspirations as a young kid. I failed my 11 plus twice. I kind of thought, and then I was told that I wasn't, that's it, and that was the dreadful thing about 11 plus, and I just wasn't. I was told I wasn't academic and all the rest of it. And I just thought, I just sort of plodded along, I suppose. But then I sort of discovered I was doing quite well, and actually I could do things quite well.
Yes.
But it's that confidence, that building of the confidence,
Yes.
And I can remember kind of realising that I could do. There's certain things I was pretty good at, actually, but it kind of you need that confidence to do that. So
when might it have been? I mean, I remember being aware that if you wanted to be an architect, you needed to do maths and physics, and art was a voluntary bit. You didn't need that. At what point did you start thinking architecture might be an interesting thing to do, and to develop on those skills you were getting?
Yeah, I mean, it is a weird thing that art. I can remember I was saying, you've got to have arts, and I thought, well, I've got all this. You have to do maths, you have to do science, all this. It's kind of. It's not really. I mean, probably a design base kind of discipline is a much, much better foundation for being an architect. So I was sort of going up the wrong tree when I was doing all the science stuff. And I think, so I kind of, my whole education was gearing towards a sort of quite a technical way of kind of looking at the world. And I think I went to Cambridge University and kind of and got there through engineering, through all the kind of maths, physics, and chemistry, all that stuff. And I just hated it. I just hated the kind of it just didn't seem to do. It didn't well for me particularly. I just didn't think it was kind of the thing I really wanted to do. But the amazing thing is that I got into university, into Cambridge University, and that opened, for me, that was sort of the beginning, sort of a revelation. And the other thing is, the architecture department was stone's throw from the engineering department, and I knew somebody from Norfolk also who had just started architecture there, and I just thought, I suddenly sort of had this epiphany that this looks so much more interesting. And I just said, can I change? I wanted to change courses. That year, I'd also done some friends of mine, we all did a trip to Greece, and we went right across Europe. We went through Italy and then to Greece, and I went through Venice. And Venice, I think, was a mixture of Venice and sort of Athens and the Parthenon. Something clicked, and I kind of realised that there was. I'd always been interested in historic buildings, but suddenly I kind of thought this is a much bigger thing than I'd ever thought about. And that's really the first time I thought about architecture in a serious way. Right. So it was quite late in a way. Yeah.
Yeah. Do you think you're saying that you realised that a design background would be as useful? So do you think there was a change within the kind of architectural field at that time? Because they're beginning to think that sciences weren't as important as these other skills. Is that a change from then to now?
I think there has been a big change, but I think maths and physics. They're in a sense. On one way around, is that they're all about conceptualizing ways things go together. Whether you're a physicist or a chemist or a kind of artist, it's about kind of trying to think how things relate to each other. Yeah. And those relationships are the crucial thing, and they're absolutely fundamental in being an architect, how you understand how pieces work together, whether they work together well or whether they completely just at odds together. And the way that people use buildings and it's all about, essentially it's about understanding patterns, I think, in the end. And you sort of intuitively I think I intuitively started intuitively understanding that when I the first time I've really been abroad, really. That was
right. And Norman Foster, in this interview again, talked about using engineers at a certain point in his architectural development, and how that was unheard of. And I wonder if that's part of what we're talking about here, that suddenly as an architect you could employ an engineer who could tell you how to do something when you've got an idea of what you wanted to do, but not perhaps how to realise it.
I think there's a big difference. Foster does, he kind of he is driven by that kind of engineering influence and that's sort of the spareness of kind of putting something of a building together in the pieces, trying to get the kind of efficiencies and kind of reducing the kind of loads and all the rest of it. That's interesting, but it's not my kind of not the thing that interests me. And it's what interests me is the way people use buildings, the way people build buildings, and I sort of hark back to that bit of kind of not kind of being told what to do, but kind of trying to experiment and do things and say, well, let's try see if it works. And yes, get something probably later to try and prove it, but let's do it ourselves.
So what did the change fundamentally mean in moving from engineering over to architecture? What sort of things were you able to start doing, thinking about, looking at under that new umbrella of architecture?
I think the architecture just started, it encompasses such a wide range of kind of disciplines. I mean, it looks at the way people behave, anthropology, sociology, it looks at kind of aesthetics, the different ways of approaching kind of the way that you kind of perceive buildings, psychology, and then obviously the technical aspects of physics, chemistry, the way materials work, and also has a kind of fairly strong philosophical kind of attitude towards the way you kind of your attitude to buildings, and so I think for me it's being kind of slightly kind of interested in lots and lots of different things. It was an amazing discipline to bring all those aspects together.
Yes. Now you went on from Cambridge to the North London Polytechnic, as it was. Now it's called something else.
It was Regent Street Poly, and then it came to it's Central Polytechnic, Central London,
right?
North London.
Okay.
I went to work there. And then from then I sort of did quite a bit of teaching. I spent 4 years at Cambridge. I thought 4 years is probably enough to be at Cambridge and then do something, go to London.
So what were you doing at the London College how was that moving you forward? And you said you were doing some teaching. Were you doing the teaching there? Or
no, I taught elsewhere, but I think that was a pivotal moment in kind of architectural history, in the sense that we had this. There was the modern movement. So modern movement is a kind of architecture of kind of seemingly kind of functionalist architecture, and it's got it had a bad press, modern architecture, but it kind of seemed to be becoming a little bit reductive in the sense of everything, you had to kind of define everything very, very functionally and, sparingly and things like that. And then this new kind of idea, which people now, everybody's called postmodernism, came into vogue, or became sort of quite interesting, and started looking back at history, looking back at classical buildings, and looking at the kind of way you put buildings together. And for me, that was a real further revelation. And I thought, I'm really interested in this. Not on the kind of really kind of crass bits of postmodernism, putting pediments and pillars and all the rest of it, but actually kind of re-looking at history and looking and kind of bringing it back into the way that you build buildings, put them together, and kind of look at them.
The sense that everything is available, in a way.
Yeah. And postmodernism was that ability that everything that you looked at everything at the same, almost at the same level. Again, you could really kind of reclaim everything that's gone in the past.
Sure. How did you support yourself at those early stages? Were you coming back and working on the farm?
Yeah, and harvest was such a wonderful time of the year, kind of where everybody gets together, and it's long days, but earning good, reasonable amount of money as my dad could afford, what was I doing at, students then, we had grants, and we were incredibly privileged. I mean, it was unbelievably privileged as students at that time, it was just, it's nothing like what you had as young people have to do now.
Well, complicated, and with architectural courses being so lengthy, it's a big challenge for people to take on.
They're absurdly long. I mean, and I think we're trying to encourage people to do more like apprenticeships and sort of day release and stuff like that, because it is too long a process to become an architect. I mean, it's longer than a doctor, and I don't think we kind of, in the end, we haven't got that kind of the expertise that a doctor would have after their lengthy period.
Well, it'd be an interesting comparison to make and discussion to have, wouldn't it? So how did your architectural career actually begin? What was how did it suddenly, I've stopped being a student, I'm now out there in the world, and this is beginning to happen?
Usual thing of having to get a job. My first job, I think, was the great thing about, the one thing about kind of as an architect, you have to use sort of 2 parts or 3 parts to it, but there's a degree and then there's a kind of diploma or an MA, and you have to do kind of practical experience in the middle.
Right.
And my first job really was first in Little Chitton, which is now Purcell, in Norwich. And I worked there for 6 months and kind of got an understanding of that, and which was really great. I've always had one of my kind of big things is India. Kind of a love, and I've always wanted to go to India, and I kind of got a job as a kind of assistant in India. I went to a city called Chandigarh, which is a kind of very modern city, which was designed by Le Corbusier, and in hindsight, it wasn't quite the city I wanted to go. I mean, I wanted to go to see an Indian city, a proper Indian city, rather than a city which had been kind of designed in the Western mode of kind of big boulevards and kind of open spaces. And but I lasted there 3 or 4 months, and I just thought, this isn't for me. And I just then kind of went and toured around India and sort of worked here and there. And then came back, and there was a period there, and I wasn't sure whether I wanted to carry on doing architecture, but it actually was, I kind of got back, and that was the point that architecture started becoming much more interesting because of, as I said earlier, about postmodernism.
Okay.
And then from then on, my kind of first really kind of influential sort of job was working for an architect in North Wales called David Lee, and he had advertised, and the last advertised for an architect on the notice board. Actually, this was at Cambridge University, and he said I wanted a architect or assistant architect who also will do a little bit of farming. And I thought, this is perfect. And I spent half my time digging trenches and trying to plant fruit trees and vegetables, and half my time designing. And, well, not quite that. A third of the time vegetables, third of the time I'm designing, and the third of the time spending my time with my current wife. So, it was, yeah.
So, I mean, a very strange mixture. How had this Welsh farmer arrived at farming and architecture as something?
Well, he had rejected kind of London, and he kind of, and was extraordinary, he'd rejected the whole business of kind of urban living, and wanted to, and the whole kind of, I suppose, capitalism, and just wanted to set up on his own kind of self-sufficient kind of world, and it was quite he wanted to kind of grow his own crops and stuff like that, and it was kind of it was very.
So what sort of work architecturally were you doing for him then?
Well, we were doing housing, small scale housing, and and
this was conversions or building from scratch?
Some of them were buildings from scratch, some of them were kind of conversions.
Right.
Yeah. And at the same time, we were kind of he was developing kind of very, very low cost kind of houses, and one of his well-known projects is for housing for elderly. But he was really interested in kind of working with natural materials, and very interested also in Japanese architecture. So we, so it was a very, very sort of good learning process. But the kind of interesting thing is, Jenny was actually working for Annabel Williams-Ellis, who is Clough Williams-Ellis's husband. Clough Williams was her husband, and he, as you all probably know, he designed Port Merion, and so Port Merion is this kind of, I don't know whether you know, any people know Port Merion, but this is a kind of beautiful Italianate, a recreation of an Italianate village on the North Welsh coast.
This is the prisoner.
Where the prisoner is, yeah. And so we've got this really, really interesting contrast between David Lee, who was the kind of, a kind of very, very, what we might, what we would call a modernist architect, that had a very sort of interest in human architecture. Yes. And a kind of, the kind of
Port Merion,
and this connection with history.
Yes. Yeah. What do you remember I'm sure you do. Remember the very first building that you could lay claim to as being you designed, and it was going into production, as it were. It was going to be built. Do you remember that?
Yes. I think. Well, the first. I mean, there's one of the again hands-on. I mean, I think it was probably our house actually. Just the house we bought, and Jenny and I bought in London. We're actually kind of making it ourselves, right. And again experimenting. We used to experiment. When we built an extension, we used drainage pipes as columns, and so just kind of using sort of odds and ends, sort of kind of to put a building together. And I think I was very sort of proud of that. And built wooden spiral staircases to get on the roof and things like that. But the most significant, and I can remember doing small extensions. But the significant breakthrough for me at that time was the really significant. I mean, I started my practice in 1985 from the front room of the house, bare floorboards and all the rest of it, did competitions and things like that. But our main breakthrough was doing this house in North Devon, a house called Baggy House on the coast, and that was just pure luck of falling into being in the right place at the right time, meeting kind of clients who kind of had no credentials at all for kind of building anything new, but that was was extraordinarily lucky.
Yes. I know somebody else was talking the other day and saying there are three things that make it up. There's ability and talent, there's determination, and then there's luck.
You have to have a luck. You have to be in the right place. But you can make your own luck. You can make your own, give you the opportunity for more luck or more opportunities to come along.
So was it fun at that stage, or was it hard work? I mean,
it's always a mixture of hard work and fun. But I mean, but it's for me, architecture has always been fun. It's like I get as much fun in it. It's like doing a puzzle. I love puzzles. I love kind of sorting out, kind of trying to work things out, pushing things around and testing things out. It's kind of constant fascination for me how things evolve, and it's kind of the evolution of kind of seeing things progress and change from one thing to another, which is something that's always fascinated me.
Sure. And at the time of starting your own practice in the front room, were you beginning to be able to do the sort of buildings you wanted to build, that you felt should be being built, or were you having to respond to what came in?
You always have to respond to what comes in. You always have to. Again, it's. I mean, my view is that you make the most of what you know, whatever you've got, whether it's kind of the jobs you've got or the materials you've got, or you just use. And crucially, because we are really interested in context and sites and what the landscape's doing and what the topography is doing, those are all crucial elements, and you just make the most of that. You just whatever you give, whatever the palette is, whether it's jobs, whether it's materials, whether it's space, whether it's topography, whatever it is, you make the most, and that's what you should be doing. That's what you should be doing.
Bit of an unfair question, maybe, but why would you say people should employ an architect rather than just a good builder?
Well, builders build. I mean, they build houses. They have no. I mean, this is probably how many builders are here.
I think it's safe.
But builders are builders. I mean, they can do. They know exactly how to put buildings together. But in terms of orchestrating space and how people use space and understand space, and how you kind of create an environment which actually kind of people can occupy and enjoy and love, and kind of through the seasons and through the hours of the day, is absolutely, for me, that's absolutely crucial.
Right.
And the narrative of the story of how you use a house or you use a building and all the different things you can do in it are fundamentally important, really, really important, and it's about enjoyment, and actually spaces in buildings should be, enablers for you to kind of have fulfill your life as much as you can.
Yeah. What architects were you beginning to look at, or were you looking at this time? Who was influencing you, if anybody?
I think, I mean, the first early on, I think the kind of big influence was people like Frank Lloyd Wright, the American architect. I mean, actually, I was in the States 2 years ago. Went to Wisconsin, to Arizona, to Taliesin, which is one of his houses in Arizona. And every time I go to kind of a building of an accomplished architect, a fantastic, architect, you kind of it's sort of electric. It's just, you just think, this is absolutely wonderful. He built this house for himself and his family, and it's kind of like, it feels like a tent in the desert, but it is a house.
Right.
And the roof was made of canvas, and the summer the canvas came off, and it was all open, and then canvas came back. His wife wasn't particularly happy with the coyotes coming in and removing kind of stuff, and put proper glass in and stuff like that. But it was quite. Those buildings were quite radical. So Frank Lloyd Wright was, for me, was kind of a very, very important influence. And then you kind of you discover, the usual. I find it very, very. You look at buildings on plans and in books and pictures, and until you actually go to see them, they are kind of, they suddenly take on a different reality. And I'm going to mention another, something you all probably know, is Le Corbusier. And I kind of have been taught a lot about Corbusier and sort of how important he was at the beginning of the modern movement and everything. And then I went to see one of his buildings, the most famous one, the Villa Savoie, just outside in Poissy, just outside Paris. And there was so much, the architecture was absolutely stunning, but there was nothing there that I've been told about all this thing about reinforced concrete and the plan libre, which means you can build anything out of concrete with columns and slabs. Yeah. But the orchestration of the space and the colours and its reference to Roman buildings. It was something which was a revelation to me, and I kind of that whole business of kind of looking at history, looking at the past, and actually using that as a kind of source for kind of inspiration for the present was really strong. And nobody ever told me about that. Nobody told that actually this person who was a modern architect actually was using kind of ideas and spaces and the way you can arrange spaces, which people have been doing for yonks, but in a much more modern way.
Is it frustrating for you slightly if you go to look at a building like the Frank Lloyd Wright? Were you able to go inside and see?
Oh yeah, you can, because it's a museum, so you can get inside. But it's frustrating when you can't get inside.
Sure.
Absolutely. And again, generally, I do try to, where I can, try to get into buildings.
Tell us about the challenges, demands and rewards of running an architectural practice. What is it, which bits do you like best? Which bits are unnecessary evil that you have to put up with?
I think we're not taught how to run business as a business. I mean, it's one of those things, again, you discover that things work and they don't work, and then you discover that you have to increase your mortgage. But because you suddenly you might be going bankrupt a number of times. You have to put money back into the business to kind of make it viable again. Right. And you think, well, how am I doing this? Oh, and then you think, well, this is quite fun. Enjoy the work. But that's early on. That was, that kind of is this going to carry on? Is this going to give me a living? That was a constant kind of worry. Yeah. But then you learn how to run a business by kind of default. And I think there's sort of people make the practice, but they're also probably the most difficult thing in the practice. Right. It's kind of because you're always dealing with lots and lots of different kind of ways of working. And I think for me a practice of about I don't know, 9 or 10 is perfect. 8 or 9, 10 people, because you can share things and you don't have to do all the sort of a lot of. And now I don't really have to do all the kind of straightforward stuff, and you can do the design work and teach people to come up. Right. But what I'm trying to do personally now is to sort of get rid of all the administration side and stuff, and hand that on over to other people. But it's a pretty hands-on kind of business. And
you've got considerably more employees than 9 or 10.
Yes, I think always one thing that we've got too many, but we're up to about 15 or 18, I think, now at the moment. Right. Right. But I think there's a nice momentum. We've got lots of great people working, and if people are prepared to take on those responsibilities to keep the practice working, that's fine. Right. I hope.
Can you give us an idea of an average day? Is there an average day, or is every day different?
Every day is different, and which is wonderful. And I can remember my dad saying, "Why do you want to be sitting behind a desk?" No, you should be outside and
looking after pigs. Yeah,
looking after pigs and outside. But I'm out and about quite a bit. On site, talking to people, finding out about how whether this is going to work or not. A lot of the time is spent trying to scratch your heads and wondering how we're actually going to resolve this. You've designed it on paper. How on earth are you going to build it? And then kind of sorting that out.
And is that the first stage, drawings on paper, and are these in the light of a conversation, or what's the first moment? Because when we met at your practice and talking, I was interested in the idea of how important words might be beyond drawing and explaining the concept that you're trying to achieve with the building you want to make.
Yeah, I think the creative process is fascinating. I think it's. I always hope or think that we never kind of go into a project saying this is what it's going to look like. it's a kind of a whole process of discovery, of finding out what the brief is, what the clients want to do, what the issues that, why are they doing this project in the first place, and trying to respond to that, and then sort of bringing all the other things that have kind of been holding in your head, and seeing whether they're kind of testing them out and seeing whether they work. And slowly what emerges, and there's some things work, some things don't work. And I think that analogy with evolution and the whole notion of sort of survival of the fittest is something that is really something that I think works very, very strongly in any creative process where some things click and some things don't.
Yes.
And the things that don't click may be really, really lovely ideas individually, but they just don't work on that project. So it's a sort of, it's a sort of test, it's a constant testing and thinking about things and drawing things, and mistakes actually are quite good because they kind of suddenly make you draw something which you kind of think, well, that's, and then suddenly you realise actually within that kind of mark or drawing, actually there's a new beginning of something else.
Presumably there are new materials or new ways of using materials coming out all the while. How do you kind of square that with, how do you keep on top of that as a practice, and making sure that everybody is up to date with what they need? I mean, that must be a complex thing.
We do the conventional thing of CPD, but we also do our own, we're there doing our own research and developing our own kind of new ways of building. We're doing something very close to our heart at the moment, is we're working with Earth, trying to build Earth building, reinvigorating the Earth building with Earth. And we just finished a house in Pakenham, built by Grocott Murphy, where we're 50% of the world population still lives in Earth buildings, and it's always been, right from beginning of time, people have used Earth, and it's kind of got out, in the West it's gone out of favour, and one of the reasons is it doesn't perform particularly well thermally, so it's not hugely insulative. It's amazingly good at structural,
right.
And Earth buildings but they're pretty ubiquitous right across the world, but also in the UK. I mean, we all know chocolate box kind of Earth buildings of southwest, of the southwest, the kind of cob buildings there. But Norfolk has got an amazingly strong Earth tradition, and talking about kind of developing kind of new ways and techniques is we wanted to develop a kind of a way of building in Earth, and when I say we, it's just the practice, and we've got French partners and universities where we had a European Union initiative research project, and we wanted to develop a way of building an Earth which not only is kind of structural but also is kind of thermally efficient and insulative, and can meet current building regulations.
So probably for all of us, we need to take a step back in there. So we're talking about, how are we talking about using the Earth? Are we talking about making bricks out of Earth and then essentially mud walls? I mean, what?
Yeah, they're mud walls. Exactly that. I mean, it's we're not making. I mean, the East Anglian, the Norfolk tradition is mud bricks. It's earth bricks which you make and dry out in the open. The cob tradition in Southwest is kind of just piling mud on top of each other.
Right.
And what we've developed is a system where you kind of create a formwork and you put two different kinds of earth, one light earth, which has kind of got lots of insulation in, and a heavy earth, which is kind of like cob, and put them together and build a wall. And
why don't they just wash down when the rain comes?
What you need for a good earth building is good boots to stop the damp coming up, and a good hat to stop the rain coming in. So as long as you've got those two aspects to it, you're perfect.
Okay. And we're talking about roof and foundations here, are we? Or are we talking about boots and hats?
We're talking about roofs.
Do you have a particular project that you worked on that you particularly proud of or fond of?
I'm still kind of incredibly fond of our first house, which is the house in Devon. But we've done a lot of things other than houses. And one of the most recent buildings, which I'm really proud of and pleased with, is the student residences and kind of lecture theatres for the Norwich University Arts, which we finished, but actually just a year and a half ago.
Right.
And today we did a big. We were photographing all our team, the whole practice in there for our new kind of website. But it was just really nice to go back there and see that. But that's been really enjoyed. And I think it's lovely doing kind of private houses, but also it's really lovely. It's the amount of people who can enjoy a public building. Yes. is phenomenal, and we're doing a really lovely. It's a strange kind of. We're converting an Argos store in King's Lynn into their new library. So that's on the cards for 2025. So
the old Carnegie Library is being left for...
Yes, I think that everybody's a bit sad that they're leaving the Carnegie Library, but this is going to give them much bigger space.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah, fabulous. I knew what my question was going to be then, and
But I think that the library is the King's Lynn Library is an interesting one, because we're kind of we want it's a very basic concrete frame, and we're wanting to keep as much as that as possible, and not destroy, not take down the building, and keep. And there's the thing called embodied energy, and the energy which was all put in. We want to make sure that we don't lose that that energy, and that we don't create more problems with kind of energy in use in rebuilding knocking down and rebuilding.
Sure. You submitted a proposal for the redevelopment of the castle, didn't you? Which you didn't, unfortunately or fortunately, get.
Yeah, I think looking now, it's kind of it's run into a lot. Those kind of buildings are incredibly complicated but fascinating. And it was Norwich Castle. It's a fascinating project, absolutely amazing. Trying to rethink, trying to get clarity on what the castle used to be, the Norman Castle used to be. Although Baldwin had done his kind of big kind of number in the kind of in the 19th century. And it was a shame that we didn't get it, but seeing what's happened and seeing the kind of problems they've had faced probably was a poison chalice to actually carry on.
Strangely, I believe the walls are almost like mud-built walls there for the castle.
Well, yes, yeah. Budgets and building projects are kind of always. It's either you always say that it's either time or money. You can't if you have a short amount of time and a short amount of money, then you've got a real problem.
Right. Interestingly, I was interviewing the owner of the local bookshop and the Beehive, last time, and we were talking a little bit about competitions and how, because they've both been nominated for the Independent Bookshop of the Year award, but were feeling a bit miffed about who got it, etc. What's your view about competitions? Because they're obviously reasonably important in architecture.
Yeah, I mean, we lost one. We heard we lost one today, or two today, I think. I can't remember what it was. You always get miffed, absolutely miffed, and you kind of, when you hear why they've chosen one and another, you think, oh, why don't we go for it?
Because there's a lot of work, and you don't get paid for that work often, do you?
No, you don't. No. I mean, when you start up a practice, you probably do lots of competitions, and that kind of just helps you move forward. Your thinking, which is great.
Yes.
But if we've been lucky that we've got quite a few projects. So I mean, you need projects to kind of, you know, keep you kind of thinking and developing ideas.
Keep you on your toes.
Yeah.
So when you'd been in Wales, you moved to London and you had a practice there, and then during the pandemic, many people might have thought, curiously, decided it would be a good moment to upheave and move lock, stock and barrel to Norfolk. How was that? What was that? No, was that...
What, in terms of
the practice and...
Well, the practice were already here.
Okay.
But the pandemic, I mean, was quite a transformation, I think, in lots of respects for everybody, I think. We, on the day that the announcement, the government said that they couldn't make up their mind whether they were going to close sites or not. But the strange thing about the practices is that sometimes you're working on early stages of projects and haven't got anything on site, and sometimes you have everything on site and very little on the drawing board. Right. And on the computer nowadays. But what we had is everything on site at that point. And then the government said, we're going to close all sites. And so in a week we had no work. There was nothing for anybody to do because we couldn't do anything. And all the sites closed down. So that was quite dramatic for us at the time. Yes. And we had a kind of had a big rethink, and we reduced in size by half, I think, over that period. And then further was a godsend.
Yes.
Having further, but it was quite traumatic. Okay. And we had big plans for a completely different kind of practice at the time.
In London?
No, in
Norfolk, okay.
Norwich, yeah.
And presumably you came back for familial reasons. You'd lived...
Oh, the whole business of... I mean, I moved the practice a long time earlier to Norwich. No, the family, the kids all went to primary school in London, and then there was the whole issue of where we were going to go to school, and we decided that we'd like to move back to Norfolk. But that was in sort of late 1996, so a long time ago. But it did take me a long time to move the practice to Norfolk.
Yes. Yeah. How do you feel Norfolk had changed from what you remembered growing up to coming back and basing yourself here? I
think, Norwich has changed quite dramatically, in terms of, it's got much more vibrant, much more younger people, it's changed quite a lot.
Yeah. Is there anything you'd like to see happen in Norfolk that isn't happening? Maybe to do with architecture and things, but maybe more general than that.
I think. I don't think there's. I mean, in Norfolk, I think there's I'd like to kind of feel that people felt that architects were kind of. Sometimes people kind of have dismissed architects as kind of not being particularly useful or practical. Yeah. And I think there's a huge practicality in the way you use architects in terms of the way you can add value to space, add value to cities, add value to
Are you partly saying what I've always felt, which is that the boards of companies should be asked to employ an artist in there somewhere, not to make things necessarily, but to bring a different view.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. I think that's one of the getting a kind of broader view of how things come together, and I think that kind of architect has that kind of broader view.
Sure. Have you got an unfulfilled ambition? Something that you really hope might come that you're allowed to tell us?
I think we would like to do more sort of public buildings, I think. Right. Yeah.
Okay. Anything you've got your sights set on? I mean, for instance, it would be good to have a modern art museum up here, like
Tate to the East would be very, very good. It would be fantastic.
But there's no signs of that at the moment, is there?
Can I just go to...
Yeah, of course you can. Yeah, we've had you talking for quite a while.
down here to speak.
Right, you're stuck with me. I've kind of come to the end of the questions I was going to ask, so I'm happy to throw it open to the floor for questions in a minute. Obviously, we'll need Anthony to be here to answer them. Would you have liked to have a short break to get another drink or anything? Yes. Yes, we can have the slideshow back. My glamorous assistant will... And obviously, if you wanted Anthony to talk about any particular building, then he would be more than happy to do so. Yes, we can. Sheila, would you mind turning that switch off on the wall by the fire alarm? No, there's on the column. No, not there. That's it. Yeah. All right. I'm so pleased it wasn't me, Anthony.
Sorry about that.
That's all right. So we've got the slideshow on. And,
Okay.
I don't know whether there's any particular slides that you would like to speak to.
So I think this is another. I don't know whether anybody's seen Grand Designs, and this is a really lovely. I don't know whether you can stop this one. Okay, well, this is a refurbishment of a 16th century barn, timber frame barn in Essex. And what was interesting, I talked earlier about how you make the most of stuff. And here, what we wanted to do was to rethink about, reconstruct this sort of timber frame barn. And the clients had, for a long time, had no success with the planners. Because they said, the planners said no roof lights whatsoever in this building. And we can't, we don't like the idea of converting it into a house. So we came up with this idea of creating a kind of mesh over the whole of the roof of the barn, and the mesh has got it's louvered mesh. It's like span metal, allows the light come in the top, so you can't actually see it from the outside. So you get this amazing pattern of metal, of this metal panels over the roof, which lets the light in. And the next slide shows the kind of interior. And that allows, and then what we wanted to do is to use as many bits of the barn, of what was in the barn before, as part of the building. So we've got these silos, which were kind of the corn silos, which we kind of repositioned and created kind of as the bathrooms and bedrooms inside those little silos, little sort of places for laundry room and things like that. And then the client was fantastic, a metalworker, woodworker, and there were lots of bits and pieces of farm machinery and stuff in the building, and we used that and welded that together to create kind of braces to of the bits of the timber structure which were failing. And so it kind of harked back to that thing about what I mentioned earlier about my kind of father kind of putting together kind of using bits and pieces of materials, the baler twine, whatever it is, to actually kind of construct to make something. Yeah. So it's looking at, seeing what you've got available and kind of, yeah.
Sure. Shall we carry on scrolling on? Yes? Yeah. Are you happy to do that, Mike? Just while we're doing that, could I say, because people will start to slip away, we don't pay for the use of the room tonight, and Anthony doesn't charge us for his time, but the centre still has to keep its lights on and things. If you would be kind enough to make a donation when you leave, that would be really great. And if you're interested in buying a ticket, we've got those for sale.
So this house. If you go back, well, this is the closest house we've done in Blakeney. This is on the way from, if you come from Brewerton up to Blakeney. If you're, well, I can go into this. This is the house. I sort of, this was the first house we did. This is Baggy House, and this is the pool. If you just go back, I don't know whether you can go back to that. You can pause that one to the last one. Don't worry. That house, you probably. Is a mixture of sort of looking at the way the houses, the shapes of houses in South Devon, this is near Croyd, the shape, the kind of battered walls, but also had reference to kind of ship's liners and the whole tradition of modern architecture, which kind of looks at sees kind of ships and planes and kind of references to those kind of forms. So that was sort of, again, amalgamation of all these ideas.
Is that Baggy House?
That's Baggy House, yeah. This is the pool just below the house. So this carry on. That's fine. This is the building we completed two years ago for Norwich University Arts, and this is student residences at the top and the lecture theatre at the bottom. And this is the auditorium, and a kind of one thing I think in architecture, which I really like doing, is trying to get all the materials and everything working lots of different ways, so that there's no one single function. And I think this is one thing that I admire Foster, and I think the St. Luke's Centre is an absolutely wonderful building. I think it's lovely, and that. But what I'd like to do is to have buildings working on lots and lots of different levels and doing lots and lots of different things. So this mesh, for example, you can see this. You can see there's a student corridor which runs along the top there. The students have a view down into the space, but you're not really aware of them behind, so you get these silhouettes of students walking through. But the mesh also has acoustic treatment behind it, it also has air vents behind it, it also has, and then it has this beautiful sort of reflective light, which kind of creates this sort of shimmering kind of space, and also hides all the kind of all the plumbing and stuff above it. There's a whole layer of plumbing and electrical stuff happening above it.
I hope, unlike the Sainsbury Centre, the building doesn't hum.
I think, well, it's almost like a Faraday cage, kind of stops stuff happening. Yeah.
You want to go on? Okay.
And I'm very happy to take questions and stuff.
Yeah. Has anybody got a question?
There's an image of a long thin building. Was that? I don't know what that one was.
A long thin building.
It's a very long thin building. I don't know. Was it the one that won Building of the Year or?
The one, there's.
I don't know where it was.
Jersey or Guernsey?
That one.
Is it that one, number 13?
Yeah,
Oh, that one, the top one.
13.
Yeah.
That's in Jersey.
Oh.
Now that was an amazing project in the sense that that wall was already there. It was a remnant. Well, it's called the small fort, Liberty Fort in Jersey, And that was Polly. This guy built this weird wall. He wanted to build this kind of notion of a sort of fortress. But it also kind of protects the plot from the sea, which is kind of, you can see very, very close. Right. And so on this project, it's kind of it's example, the kind of thing I really love doing is picking up on lots of things. So we thought, well, let's carry on that idea of the fort. And Jersey, as we know, has got lots of fortifications, medieval castles, and then there's this whole Second World War thing about, kind of the Germans and the concrete bunkers they made and the kind of tunnels, and so it sort of picked up on that. And so we recreated the notion of a keep, so that central taller block is an idea of a keep, the sort of central keep of the site of the building. So you've got this curtain wall around the edge and then the keep in the middle, and then these wings kind of come out of it, which are the kind of living wings of the house. Yeah. And then there's reference of the sort of slits to kind of the German kind of gun posts and things like that. And so there's a whole kind of amalgam of lots of different ideas, lots of different references, and then using the Jersey granite as a kind of as the material. And then the corten, which is sort of a kind of material I really like using, is the orange, the rusty metal, and that was sort of reference of kind of, I don't know, rusting boats and things around, kind of lying around the place. So that's the kind of that's the sort of, there's always, generally in the buildings, there's always a story wrapping around the kind of the idea of the design, and which kind of you build on, and those thoughts come together and you build on those thoughts.
And as you're saying, practically it's a sea defence as well, isn't it?
And it's a sea defence, yeah.
So those are obviously double doors up there that would open, are they?
Those are double doors which are kind of, like little
sliding
protection, so in the summer those open up and then you can walk out and go surfing.
Right. Yeah.
You hear two things on the news a lot. One is the lack of housing for everybody. The other one is how retail is in the decline in cities. I was wondering how viable you think it would be to convert buildings that were designed as department stores into attractive housing for people to live in.
I think absolutely you can. I mean, you've got that example of Debenhams in Norwich, and I think it's. Having shown the student residences, there's plans for Debenhams to be converted into student or more residences. Mm-hmm. I think that would be a real. Personally, I think that would be a real shame. But I think there's much more potential there to actually create flats and apartments with potentially gardens and things like that. And so I think we haven't done. I think Norwich, for example, and most cities have not done well at keeping their populations in the centre of the city. And I think we've got to do a lot more. And retail has kind of done a double whammy. Everybody thought retail was the big thing, and kind of there was too many retail units, and whereas we should have had a much better balance of livable housing space within the city. I'm a huge. Anglia Square is another. Been trying to keep local again. Anglia Square is another kind of bugbear of mine, because I think I actually love that. I kind of love. I'm very controversial, but I love Southern House. I think that it's a most amazing, brutalist building, and I think it could be re-inhabited and lived in, and made something really made a wonderful place for people to live. And so I think this, it just needs. It just needs that ambition and aspiration, and people to allow it, to really think kind of interesting ways of doing things like that.
Another question at all? James?
to me, it's rather disappointing, given the last 25 or 30 years there have been endless Londons moving out to Norfolk. Now you can spend £1 million, £2 million, and they go via boring Georgian rectory. But they do. Is it your fault or the plans that they're not building nice modern houses?
I think one of the issues is I mean, we have got a very, very restrictive planning issue, and I think we should be building more new houses. We definitely should be building new houses, not just those big expensive houses, but kind of affordable houses. And there should be a much better, much more open planning system where we do lots of infill sites, and all our villages, all the Norfolk villages have got potential sites for kind of doing really interesting infill sites. The problem is the quality of what people see going up is not great generally. We're allowing planners are allowing kind of they see an easy win in kind of allowing a kind of estate of 50 or 100 houses, whereas they should be focused and because that's kind of they can sort out their housing kind of the housing policy through that, whereas we should be kind of doing a much more kind of smaller inserted infill sites for in existing villages, and also that helps kind of vitality of villages and supporting shops and so on and so forth. Similarly, I think that has to go hand in hand with the possibility of building kind of new houses for people who do rather than necessarily kind of using having for their rectories and stuff like that. It's fine, it's great. But we are seeing lots and lots of more people, potential clients, who are saying, I'm living in this drafty 19th century house. How on earth am I going to afford the bills? Or not just the bills, I can afford the bills, but I just, I'm spending all this money on energy, and all this stuff is going up in the air. So how can we, how can we really want to build something which is much more energy efficient, and it's very, very difficult to do that because we have such a restricted planning policy. There's a huge willingness. I also think that there is a fairly conservative attitude, small c, conservative attitude towards kind of the way buildings look. And I think that's something which is quite prevalent. We've noticed prevalent to a certain degree in Norfolk, and we do get asked to design houses and people want them to look Georgian or to look have a sort of slight historic pastiche, and then they want a modern interior. I mean that's obviously personal preference, but I sometimes it's that's quite frustrating. That's Baggy House. That's the one I was talking about, and that is it has a sort of two faces. It has a very open kind of south-looking face, which is lots of glass, and then very, very closed on the north side with small windows, which are kind of more reminiscent of the kind of cottages in North Devon.
Was the waterfall in that a nod to Frank Lloyd Wright at all?
That's a nod to Barragan, the kind of Mexican architect. Okay. And the pink wall is very, very kind of it's kind of a bit of a kind of thing about English climate. I mean, actually in the southwest, it's generally quite warm, but not quite as hot as Mexico.
If you could go back and give your younger self a bit of advice, what would it be, if anything?
I think it's probably build a confidence have a bit more confidence in your ability at sort of an early stage. I mean, it's an iterative process. I mean, my confidence came much later than most people's, I think.
Right.
And I think it's just kind of recognise what you're good at and do it.
Yes. Yeah. It's easy in the benefit of hindsight.
Yeah.
I think we're sort of coming to an end, really, aren't we? So can we show our appreciation in the usual way?